Well, goodness gracious, that's pretty good, actually. I'm going to even be mentioning a few of the things, but not the way he did. Oh, hi, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Oh, there we go. I love this place. I really do. This is great. Well, we talked about this, who is Israel, and last week we were talking about all of the people from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. We got all the who is who sort of things. Well, today I have to talk about Jacob because there's something really important. Abba Yahweh, please open our eyes that we might see and hear wonders from your word. Ooh. I'm actually looking forward to this message. I want to hear what he says. Okay. Last week we kind of left Jacob with his wives. So he goes, because Isaac tells him, don't take a wife from the local girls. They don't meet our standards. So Jacob goes to Haran. He's going to go to, what's the guy's name? Lavan. We're going to go see Laban and try to see what Laban's got going if he can pick up a wife over there. Anyway, he heads out. He's going along. And in Genesis 28, 11 through 12, it says, and he came upon a place, and he stopped over for the night, for the sun had set. Good time to take a nap. Now, they didn't have Hotel 6 back then or anything like that, so he's just going to sleep out on the ground. And he takes one of the stones and of that place, and he puts it at his head, and he lays down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed and saw a ladder set up on the earth, and its top reached to the heavens. And he saw messengers of Elohim going up and coming down. Now, there's the point, I don't think it makes it clearly in the scripture here. He's alone. He's alone here, and he'll be alone again later when a great thing happens, and he has a visitation from Yahweh. Okay, so he sees this ladder. Now, Jacob's ladder, I'll tell you what, there's all kinds of images and everything else, but the Hebrew word ladder, that's the only time that word appears. And it means ladder. It's a ladder. And it goes up into the heavens. And Yahweh is standing at the top of the ladder and speaks to Jacob. Now I want to tell you, I'd love to have that happen to me. There he is, and Jacob hears what he's saying. So this is what Yahweh says. I am Yahweh Elohim of Abraham your father, and the Elohim of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying I give to you and your seed. That's Genesis 28:13. 28:14 says, and your seed shall be as the dust of the earth. And you shall break forth to the east, or to the west and to the east, the north and the south, and all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. This is almost word for word what Yahweh told Abraham. And he told Isaac, and now he's telling Jacob exactly the same thing. There is no change to the promise. That's kind of what Yahweh does. He doesn't change, and the promises are the same. Continuing. Now, I think there's something hidden here in verse 14 of Genesis 28. And see, I am with you and shall guard you wherever you go, and shall bring you back to this land For I am not going to leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Bring you back to this land? He hasn't gone anywhere yet. What's this about? I'm not going to leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you? There's something more being said than is being said. I think that Yahweh is speaking not just to the man Jacob laying there with his head on a rock, but that he's speaking to Jacob, who is also called Israel, and to all of Jacob's seed, right there in that verse. He's talking to all those gazillions of people up to us. The promise will be carried out. It will never get changed. Nobody's going to come along and say, no, now that's us. We're Israel, or nope, you can't do. It ain't happening. Jacob continues on his journey. So he is headed towards this Haran town, and he wants to pick up one of the girls from Laban and have a wife. So he sees Rachel. And it's like thump, thump, thump. I mean, this guy's really going crazy. He kisses Rachel, he lifts up his voice, and he cries. So this is an actual photograph of this event taking place. Now, there must have been something in that part of the world where people could dress kind of weird with their clothes not on completely, and men didn't have to shave, or did shave, and some didn't. And it's kind of weird, but he falls instantaneously in love with this girl. So when they say love at first sight, there's a biblical example of that happening. And it does. And he is smitten by this woman. He goes to her dad, Laban, and he makes arrangements to have her as wife. But it so happens she's the younger daughter. And Laban is not a very nice guy. So, here's how this is going to work out. Eventually, and you can read the whole story because there's a whole lot of stuff that goes on, and I mean, Jacob works really hard for the women. And anyway, Laban is not a nice guy, but he has two daughters. He tricks Jacob into marrying Leia, the older girl, before he can have Rachel. And he's happy because somehow he sees, it doesn't show it in this picture, but he's got dollar signs in front of his eyes, or shekel signs or something. That's all he sees. That's his whole thing. So I wonder about that household idol later that Rachel stole. I wonder about its power over Levan. I just want to, it doesn't explain it, it just says what it says. Made of gold. Okay, we got some more pictures. Jacob marries Leah and Rachel. Here's the thing. We got Jacob, and the first woman that he's going to marry is Leah. He also gets Leah's servant girl. It'll call it female servant in many of the versions. Zilpah, he gets Zilpah out of this deal. And then he marries Rachel, and he gets Bilhah out of the same deal. So he's got 4 women to deal with. I do not envy this man one speck. Eventually, out of these 4 women, he is going to have 12 sons. And this is an actual photograph of the 12 sons. You know it's a photograph because it's black and white and it looks old. Anyway, he gets these 12 sons. These 12 sons are the keystone of us. They are the keystone of Israel. They are the heads of the 12 tribes. And here's what it says in Genesis 35, verse 22. It talks about some other stuff, and then there's like an aside note. It's talking to stuff about Bilhah and Reuven and them guys. And then, now the sons of Jacob were 12. So it says he had 12 sons, not one son named Judah. He had 12 of them with different names. 12 sons. Okay. Jacob has 12 sons. Genesis 35:22. Judah needs to be reminded from time to time, they're not in charge. Okay, so Jacob marries Leah. That's Genesis 29:25. Your notes should be, your fingers should be flying across the note paper. And he gets Zilpah. And then he marries Rachel, Genesis 29:28. And he gets Bilhah. Okay, that's his girls. Leah gives him the firstborn son. And that's Genesis 29:32. And that's Reuven, Reuben, first son. Genesis 29:33. The next son is Shimeon, Simon. And Genesis 29:34. Number 3, Levi. Okay, have you seen Judah yet? Nope. Genesis 29:35, now Judah shows up. Okay, so he doesn't even sit in the first position. Maybe I'm wearing that out a little bit too much. So anyway, Rachel says, come on, I want kids. I mean, this isn't working real well. Now, in their culture, you could loan the husband your servant, your female servant, of course, and get a kid through that. Well, that's what Sarah did with, all right, you got that part? So in Genesis 30, verse 6, Dan, it's pronounced Don. He's the 5th son. He's born to Bilhah. And then in Genesis 30, verse 8, Naphtali, he is number 6, and he's born to Bilhah. And then Zilpah gets into the act. Like, wow, anyway, Genesis 30, verse 11, God is born. And then she gets another son, and that's Asher, and that's Genesis 30, 13. Whoa, Leah shows back up again and says, all right, we got to get this thing going. She has another son, Issachar, and that's Genesis 30, verse 18. Zebulun, number 10. Genesis 30, verse 20. So watch the video when you get home and you get all these verses down. All that's good for is keeping it all together. These guys are named. What would it feel like if your name appeared in the Torah? I mean, your name, even if it's just in passing. Anyway, all these guys are in there. Wow. Finally, a girl shows up, Dinah. You know, somebody's in the kitchen with Dinah. Anyway, Genesis 30, verse 21, Dinah is born. And then Rachel finally has a kid, and that's Joseph, the 11th son. That is Genesis 30, verse 24. But then a lot of time goes by, and she has Benjamin, which is 12, and that's 35, Genesis 35, 18. There they are, all 12 of them. Genesis 35, 22 says Jacob had 12 sons. That's it, no more and no less. I have to step aside a little bit. We got to go on a little side trip. I'm not going to talk about Joseph a lot anyway, but Joseph goes to Egypt. You can read the story. I think that's our next week's Torah portion anyhow. Joseph goes into Egypt, not really by his own choice. Anyway, Pharaoh gives Joseph a wife, and that's Asenat. And that's Genesis 41:45. He gets this Egyptian girl. And they have two sons who are Manasseh, and Ephraim, 1 and 2. And that's Genesis 41:50 through 52. All righty? So there's two boys. However, a little bit later on, Jacob will adopt the two boys, Manasseh and Ephraim. And there's kind of a thing here. Jacob really wants to give Joseph an extra special blessing, and this is how Joseph gets double the blessing. Anyhow, and that's Genesis 48, verse 5. Okay, today's Torah portion, we talked about Jacob being named Israel. This is the second time in Scripture where he is alone. And there's a couple things that happen. You see the whole thing with Esau and everything else. Anyway, in Genesis 32, Jacob's going to meet his brother Esau. Pastor did an excellent discussion on what was going on. He's scared, and he sends his company kind of scattered to the wind, just in case somebody gets wiped out, then the others will survive, and so on and so forth. But in Genesis 32:24, Jacob's left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And the word there is man, ish. Man, that's all it says. And we have the impression, because later Scripture is telling us that he wrestled with Elohim, which is what happened, or an angel, or, personal opinion, Yeshua. I'm just saying. Okay. And then this man says to Jacob, your name is no longer called Jacob, but Israel, because you have striven with Elohim and with men and have overcome. That's where I'm getting the idea that it's Yeshua. Yeshua will later become an actual physical man, but he is also Elohim. And it kind of is leading me to believe that in that verse. If Rashi can say stuff, so can I. Here's the deal. Israel means to strive with El, to overcome with El, or to rule with El. That's exactly what the name means. Thus, the name Jacob, which could be supplanter, is discarded. And he picks up the name to rule with El. Conclusion. We made it to the conclusion screen. The original covenant promise to Abraham is transferred to Isaac. It is transferred to Jacob. Doesn't go to anybody else. And there are other choices. Esau could have had it. Esau didn't, that wasn't really smart what he did. The original covenant promise to Abraham is transferred to Jacob's 12 sons. Not one, but 12 of them. And that original covenant promise to Abraham will be transferred to the 12 tribes of Israel. That's us. And that we're going to see over the next few weeks how that becomes us. We are in that covenant promise. Shalom, y'all.